must be skeptical of absolutely everything. Above all, this is a war of propaganda.
Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
We only need to use the word faith when there isn't any evidence.
I presume you've got faith in your wife. Is there any evidence for that?
Yes, plenty of evidence. I
strongly resist the idea that archaeology is a science. These days, academics are driven by the need to publish research papers.
Now, of course I am minimising my tax, and if anybody in this country doesn't minimise their tax, they want their heads ripped. Because as a government, I can tell you, you're not spending it that well that we should be donating extra.
The easy answer is this. If we continue to send our children to Caesar for their education, we need to stop being surprised when they come home as Romans.
Welcome to Fringe Frequencies. We are joined here tonight with myself, Cody, and...
what should I call myself this time?
I don't know. Your name?
Yeah. Jake, Jace, yeah.
Jace, yeah.
Jason McAvain.
Yeah, that's
my
it.
Celtic name. Yeah. Good evening.
That's self-doxing, man, if you say your own surname, but that's all right.
That's my Celtic name.
Is it
I didn't
really?
give my last name.
Is that a tribe? Is that a clan?
Yeah, it's Pictish, the Pictish people. You know the white Māoris, you know, with the tattoos?
Yeah.
In Northern Scotland? Yeah,
I've seen them, yeah.
So is it episode 10?
No, this is episode 11. Yeah, 10 was...
10 was last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. This shows how much I know.
Well,
welcome.
We're
Welcome,
joined
guys.
by Jack. Jack... Oh man, I don't even want to spoil anything about who you are and why you're here, but I will give a very short introduction. You've come at a very short notice. You're a very busy man with regards to your family and your commitments, but please introduce yourself, bro. Tell us who you are.
Evening, guys. My name's Jack Ellis. Been a Christian for probably good 17 years. Came to know the Lord, had Christian parents, Christian home. So married for 7 years, 3 children. And about 18, 20 months ago, my son Sam, middle son, who was 18 months at the time, was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma. And we've been here in Melbourne ever since, relocated from Benalla to Taylor's Lakes in Melbourne. And we've been here at the Royal Children's and here in Taylor's Lakes, going through that ever since. So
yeah, thank you, man. So obviously we've invited you on tonight to discuss Sammy and the experience that you've had. Firstly, let me say it's a privilege to know you, because you know there's a lot of people that have stories where they're pretty far removed from individuals who struggled with this ailment, cancer. Man, you know, there's been a few people in my family that had cancer, but I haven't experienced firsthand or at least seen firsthand the effort, the struggle, and the things that go into it. So thank you. Thank you for coming on, being willing to share it with us. You know,
absolutely.
How is Sammy, man?
Sam at the minute he's quite well at the minute. He's coming towards, I suppose, the end of his treatment now. He's probably the healthiest he's ever been, really, in his life, I suppose. Like his hair's all grown back. He's got his energy. The attitude is coming right back at us now. He's doing really well. Running around with Tommy, his older brother, who's 4, and he's living life to its fullest, and really enjoying life, I suppose.
There's if with your permission, I'd like to show the photo that you showed me of a before and after with him, where Sam was in one photo quite sick, and then in another photo he was looked relatively normal little boy.
Yep.
There's so much to go through, but I wanted to ask you. I'm trying to be specific about how we start the story, but when was he diagnosed? Like, what can you go through that with us?
Yeah, so he was diagnosed on the 26th of February 2022. So before that, we noticed probably would have been late November 2021, early December 2021, that he started, I suppose he's a lot more whingy than usual. He wasn't sleeping very well. He wasn't eating normally. Wasn't sleeping through the night at all. He'd be up quite regularly. And we thought maybe just teething, maybe just going through some sort of sleep regression. And then, time went on, Christmas came and went, and wasn't really getting much better, so we took him to a doctor, and they pretty much said, it's a virus, here's some Panadol, go home. And anyway, so we did, and probably 2 weeks later, he wasn't getting any better, he was probably getting worse. So this is probably early January, and he didn't want to really walk. He, looking back at pictures now, was actually quite pale. So we took him to another doctor, and same thing. They said, it's a virus, here's some Panadol. They didn't look at him, didn't do a blood test, didn't do any scans.
Was that your local doctors up in Benalla?
It wasn't our actual doctor who we usually see. She wasn't available at the time.
Okay.
So it was another doctor, and they said, it's a virus. Panadol.
So several doctors, so like 2 or 3 doctors at this point, or virus.
So by the end of it, by mid-February, we'd probably seen 4 or 5 doctors at that point.
Okay.
All of them said it's a virus, it's some Panadol. One of them actually suggested doing starving him, or not starving, but he had to pretty much not eat for 48 hours. They reckon he had some sort of stomach bug, and they recommended him not eating for, I think it's like something like 48 hours.
So you'd been, just to sort of, because one of the things I guess I'm thinking about is at certain points in this discussion, I want to sort of hone in on that. So at this point, you're on to the 5th doctor. So you haven't seen the same doctor every time.
No.
It's because it's like one of those sort of super clinics where you just get in with who you get in with.
Yep.
But they do have access to the notes.
Yes.
Yep, they got access to the notes. You're on your 5th doctor, and they've got clearly either haven't gone back through the notes or have gone back to the notes. And at what point did we see any blood tests?
Never.
Okay.
So pretty much, by early February, middle February, he was up probably every hour at night time. Couldn't sleep. He seemed to be in pain, but as soon as you pick him up, he would stop, and if we put him in bed with us, he would most of the time go to sleep. Just couldn't seem to sleep in his own bed. And anyway, so we took him. Our doctor was available, must have been 26th February. And she ended up actually coming around to our house, and she came and had a look, and she said, something's not quite right here. She said, go to emergency, I'll organise an x-ray and then an ultrasound. And she rang us back the same day, and she said, we found a lump, it's cancerous. And she said, the Royal Children's, I rang them, and they said they'll be in touch with you on Monday. So this must have been a Friday. And anyway, so Friday, like he seemed, by this point, he's getting worse every day. So Friday, he was just listless, lying on the couch, no energy, couldn't really walk, wasn't eating, didn't sleep at all Friday night. Ended up driving to Wangan, I don't know if you know Benalla and Wangaratta at all, ended up driving on the freeway from Benalla to Wangaratta, Benalla all night, just because he slept in the car. Saturday, he just got worse and worse, just crying all day. And Saturday night, we ended up we'll just go to the Royal Children's now. So I think we left Benalla, must have been probably about 10 o'clock at night, and went to the Royal Children's, and because we can get admitted through ED. And so me and my wife drove up. I think it's either my mum or sister stayed with our other son, Tommy. And Lauren was actually pregnant with our third, Taylor, now. And so we all drove up and went into ED, and it's during COVID, so there's only one parent at this time. So Lauren dropped us off, and she ended up going to stay at her mum's, her grandma. And I talked to Sam in, and the Royal Children's, as you know, that time, as they were always busy, and they took a look at him, and I reckon within about 5 minutes they had pushed us right through all the screening areas. There's about 2 screening areas. They pushed us through into a room. He was in a bed. He was given endone, which is strong painkiller. Yeah, and he was asleep, and that was probably the first good sleep he's had. Would have been in probably months, probably weeks and months. And they were incredible. Just how quickly they got him in, and that was the first blood test he would have had was
Yeah.
in.
But they had the information on the cancer at that point, on the tumor at least,
Yeah, so they knew there was a tumor there, but they didn't know what it was.
because they hadn't done their biopsy yet. Yeah.
No, so there's no biopsy, only an ultrasound and a X-ray
Okay.
at that point.
Okay.
So when did this sort of penny drop with regards to the cancerous nature? Because I think you mentioned so by the time you got there, were they aware it was cancerous? Were they aware?
Yeah, so they was aware it was cancerous. So our doctor back home had rung them and explained what they found, and the hospital said come in on a Monday.
Yeah.
So we ended up coming in Sunday night because he was just too sick and in too much pain, discomfort to go in. Panadol wasn't cutting it, and so we went to the Royal Children's.
And so I guess, was there a point in time you can say, well, oh man, our lives turned upside down at this point, you know?
Yep, that date.
Yeah.
26th of February. I can always remember that date. I read a phone call from the doctor. She said, he's sitting down. She said, he's got cancer. It was bigger than like a grapefruit, she described it as. There's a massive lump on his, it started in his adrenal gland and was sitting on his liver. And when they did all their scans, it was actually so big that it had cut off the blood supply to his legs. So that's why he couldn't walk. So he would have had permanent pins and needles, like shocking pins and needles in his legs. I was squashing his kidneys, I was squashing his liver, I was squashing his stomach, and I was starting to push up against his lungs and his heart. So, so that's, why he's in so much pain. Poor kid, he couldn't walk, and you know how bad pins and needles are, but he would have had that permanent in his legs.
And children can't verbalise these things.
No, he was only 18 months, so he couldn't talk.
So, where did they give you a prognosis then?
So that must have been the Sunday morning. We were admitted into, I think it was Sugar Glider ward at that point, and then we eventually got transferred to Kookaburra ward, which is the cancer ward. And Monday morning, the doctors come first in. We're first on the list, and they ordered, I think it was 8 different scans. There was CT, MRI, MIBG, X-ray, ultrasound, MRI, blood tests, all those different tests. So we had to have just like, I think it was a catheter, cannula, in his arm for the time being. I reckon he had 3 in the first day because he kept pulling them out. So they ended up putting a
all his IVs and stuff.
So that he pulled that. He didn't like them, so he pulled quite a lot of them out actually. But in the end, so by Thursday, they done all their tests. They done their biopsy, done the whole lot, and they came back. So Thursday morning, we're sitting in their room, and I think it was about 8 doctors walked in. So as a head of oncology, and the rest were all fellows, which they're learning their degree of oncology, I suppose. And they sat down and said, he's got neuroblastoma. So it's only about 1 in 30 kids. Only about 30 kids a year in Australia are diagnosed with it. So it's fairly rare. It's very aggressive. He's stage 4. His scans, he lit up like a Christmas tree. It's literally from his skull all the way down to his knees. So they said he had at that point probably a 60% chance of survival. So fairly good odds, I would have thought. And so that was pretty confronting, talking to those guys, and they mapped out his treatment for the next 12 months. And so that was on a Thursday, and by Friday, he had his Hickman line put in, so he had to go on to have his Hickman line. So that's a line that goes in your chest, goes up your neck and down into your, I suppose, your stomach and your blood vessels. And that's where they put all their chemo and other like morphine and all that stuff through that. Had a nasogastric tube, NG tube, put up his nose. It goes up his nose, back of his throat, into his stomach, and that's how they do all their feeding and other meds. So he had those put in, and by Friday he'd started his treatment, and they didn't muck around. They were onto it very, very quickly, and so pretty much within a week of being diagnosed, he'd already had a proper diagnosis. He'd had always procedures, and started treatment. So they didn't muck around.
So with the treatment there, what treatment was he given initially? Was it radio or chemo?
Chemo. So he had 5 rounds of induction chemo. So 2 of them were cisplatin, and they were super toxic. He was sick for weeks after. So even the smell of food would make him throw up. So I'm pretty sure when he went in for treatment, he was about 12.5 kilos. By the end of his induction chemo, I think he was about 8.9 or 9 kilos. So he was skin and bone, had no hair anywhere.
I'm gonna make a stab that through this whole process, you've done a lot of reading.
Done a little bit.
Yeah. Can you are you able to describe to us what chemo is?
So a lot of my reading and a lot of the, I suppose, the things that I've seen and I've heard other people say that, and I suppose I can't clarify this. I'm just going with what other people said.
Sure.
But a lot of people suggest that there is mustard gas in chemo, and as far as I'm aware, chemo is actually not. Is it TGA approved in Australia for kids under 18? I believe. So I'd have to clarify that. But for kids under 18, I don't believe it's actually TGA approved. And yeah, it wrecks him. His hair, his weight, his stomach, everything, energy, wiped him. So, yeah, it was pretty confronting, I suppose, at the time. But yeah,
okay.
We like, I've seen photos of Sammy during that period of time. Would you say over that time, did he, because I mean, it's funny we use these terms, get better and get worse, but would you say over that time during this treatment, because obviously it's the early stages, you were hopeful that he would be okay?
Yeah, so I was always very positive, I suppose. Him leaving wasn't an option. And as far as I'm concerned, at the time, wasn't going to happen on watch. So we sort of, as soon as he was diagnosed, straight away, we went into all his natural foods, his supplements, I suppose alternative treatment. And from what we know, what I knew before he was diagnosed, what I know now, is a lot. We've had a lot of time in hospital to think about it, and obviously a lot of time at home with Lauren researching. But yeah, it's surprising what you learn and what you see actually works.
How much time would you say you've spent in hospital with Sammy?
So he's had 5 rounds of 6 rounds of reduction came. So he had 5 rounds, then he had surgery, then 1 more round. So 6 rounds all up. And then he's just finished his 17th round of immunotherapy. So 17 and for us 23 weeks of just treatment weeks, and then not including hospital appointments, blood tests, scans, surgeries, other procedures, checkups, all that sort of stuff. It'd be probably a good 30 weeks, I suppose, straight. So what's that, 3/4 of a year?
30 weeks all up?
Yeah, probably more.
Wow.
Probably 30, 35 weeks.
So, I mean, obviously, and I'm going to ask this facetiously, I mean, obviously, the government covered all these costs and you're reimbursed for lost time at work,
No, it's not. So we had to pay for Sam's meds. So like his Panadol and Dantrotron, Cyclozine, they're heavily rebated, but we still had to pay for them.
I thought our tax was paid for that.
It would have been nice, but and then I don't think it might be a couple grand by now. It's not in the grand scheme of things.
It's not ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous. If we were in America, you'd be looking in millions of dollars with his treatment and his scans and everything. So
even hospital time, stuff like that.
Oh, exactly.
I believe.
It'd be hundreds of thousands.
Oh, we'd be told it's over $2 million if you're in America.
Yep.
So
unless you got the correct coverage.
Yeah, if it's insurance and that sort of stuff. So, so we've had to pay for his meds. I don't get any compensation for lost time at work.
Yeah.
Because I had a really good job in Benalla with my best mate, best boss I ever had. We had a really good time working with him. But since we had to move to Melbourne. Obviously, self-employed again, and pretty much if I'm not working, there's no income coming in.
Yep.
So,
can I just cast back a little bit, sort of bit of a tangent? I do recall in the very early stages when it came to hospital visits during COVID that they were a little bit interesting. Can you just can you unwrap that for us?
Yeah. So, February 2022, still I suppose really in the thick of COVID, and that somehow the question never come up for probably the first week or two when we were in there, and
The question?
Are you vaxxed or not?
Yeah.
And obviously I'm not. The wife's not. And once they found out that we weren't, we had to go from the blue masks, just your normal every day, to N95s, which I don't know how people breathe in. It's awful.
I've worn them. They're terrible.
Yep. So, obviously, wore them as little as you could, and most of the nurses, they're very good, and but it's not really nurses. You can't get up past security and past the people at the front without one. So, so when they found out, because Sam had to have a lot of blood transfusions, he had to have a lot of platelets for white blood cells, red blood cells, platelets, all that sort of stuff. And I asked the question, is can you have unvaxxed blood? Can you have my blood? Can you have Lauren's blood? Can you have a friend of mine who's not vaxxed? And that doctor looked at me really weird. And
is that being generous? Did he look at Luke?
Give us the ungenerous version.
Was he offended?
He just sort of
looked at you.
I don't think he's ever heard that question before.
Like you had two heads.
Yeah, he's like, "What are you on about? Are you on drugs?" Yeah. He didn't say that, and he walked out and he said, "Oh, not really." He said, "The only blood you can have is from the Red Cross." So I couldn't give Sam my own blood, even if I was a perfect match. They couldn't take it out of me and give it to him. It's got to come from Red Cross. So pretty much, whatever.
That's really strange.
I would have thought so, but it's their policy, I suppose.
It's their policy. Surely they give you an explanation as to why that's the policy.
They just said that's it.
Yeah,
it's
it'd be liability. It'd be screening. Who knows?
Yeah, okay.
So I can understand it in a way. Maybe you've got some sort of transmitted disease. I don't know. Maybe you've got something. But anyway, the question was asked. I asked of them, can we have unvaxxed blood? And they said pretty much whatever comes to Red Cross is what he gets. Whether it's vaxxed or not, we'll probably never know. I'm sure they could probably find out if they really wanted to. But next we had another doctor come in, and he'd somehow got it mixed up. I don't know what this other doctor thought, what he said. But he come in, he must have thought that we were Jehovah's Witnesses. And
because they don't do blood transfusions.
Yeah. And he said, "What's this I hear about you not wanting to do a blood transfusion?" And I said, "Oh, I want to do the transfusion. That's not the problem. I just want to know if there's a chance we can have unvaxxed blood or my blood." And he pretty much...
Specifically, I guess for the listeners here, for the mRNA vaccine, non-mRNA vaccinated blood.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in the end, I wasn't a match. I believe my wife was, but they wouldn't take it.
She's pregnant.
Yeah. So in the end, we didn't really have a choice. Sam's platelets and his blood counts were dangerously low, and he had to have it. So I suppose trusting God that he'll be fine. Praise God, he's fine at the minute. No effects, it would seem. He's had litres and litres of blood, litres of platelets. For the first probably 3 or 4 months, he had regular blood transfusions. So
yeah, okay.
Before we deviate off that, probably like ourselves, as we've discovered quite extensively from various, some very, very good doctors and professors in the world who they don't have to remain nameless, but we kind of know who they are. They've been absolute titans against the horde of assault of, ad hominem attacks, attacks on their credibility, their personals, and we now know that there were essentially 0 trials for the mRNA vaccines. So, just for our listeners out there, for those that think we're all here with tinfoil hat, there were no credible at all trials for mRNA vaccines. So, for you as a father, it's a very
You're vindicated.
You're vindicated. Yeah, 100%. You're vindicated from a year ago. I mean, for a lot of us here, and we're not saying we're vindicated because we're trying to laugh or denigrate those who got vaccinated, because some people made that decision to trust. That's fine. We made a different decision based on our own discernment, our own wisdom. But we're not doing it to gloat. I don't know, you're not either. But it was a very reasonable, plausible question.
I thought so at the time.
And you probably still think so now.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. I don't. Looking back now, I don't really. I don't regret many decisions we made. We didn't make them very. I suppose we prayed about a lot of them, and Loz and I always talked about together about what we did and didn't want to do, and for the most part, our senior oncologist has been fantastic. Had a few disagreements with a few other doctors, but majority of them have actually been pretty understanding. You're never going to agree 100% with all of them, and that's okay. You're allowed to have different opinions.
Sounds like Christians.
I'm just going to walk that statement back here. There were trials, but in the very first stages, tons of people died. Like, a lot of people died in the particularly the Pfizer. I was just going to say Pfizer. Tests, and that and so it should have been stopped and it got FDA approval.
AZ was pretty bad too.
Yeah, AZ was pretty bad. Yeah. So when I say there was no trials, there were no credible ones. Absolutely. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that as an addendum before somebody crucifies me.
Yeah. Look, we're not doctors. We just have strong opinions. We've watched people.
We just read things.
Who have who have the authority to say this stuff. But particularly, I would just like to say, Jack, I completely agree. That would have been a question that would have arisen in my mind, And the idea now, sorry, we're rolling this all the way back again, but yeah, the idea now I think I have in my mind is that, a doctor might not look at you sideways now. If you said, is it vaccinated blood? They might actually consider, are there those, I don't know, the lipids, the nanoparticles in it, who knows, right? But, you mentioned that some doctors agreed, some didn't. You shared with me a little while ago something. It had something to do with. So first, before I get into how you started to try to take more control over Sammy's treatments, so what was it that spurred you on to really look into alternative things?
Yep. So by the end of his induction chemo, so we done 5 rounds, which got us to must have been in June, July. And then it would have been May, June. So he had 5 rounds by May or June last year. And then he had his surgery, must have been July. And that was pretty major surgery. He had his literally cut from side to side. He had his stomach, had his bowel, bladder all out on the table so he could access where his tumour was. And I think it was a 7-hour surgery. And so when he came back, he had wires and tubes all over him. He had his massive, V-shape, obviously cutting him. He was very swollen because obviously they kept the fluids up on him. He was in a lot of discomfort. But I think what they did is they put these little morphine. It's like a drip. So I had a big ball of morphine on each side of his cup, and they had like drip lines running through his incision, and so he had morphine running through that pretty much for probably 2 weeks. And I reckon within 3 hours he was sitting up and playing with his trains. Obviously very uncomfortable. You couldn't pick him up by his armpits because obviously he's being cut through. He had to be picking up very, very gently. But yeah, once that sort of morphine started to wear off, he was in a lot of discomfort. But I suppose the biggest problem that arose from that wasn't him healing. It was his they accidentally nicked a lymph node in his stomach, and that became a leaky lymph node, and his stomach ended up being 6 to 7 times the size it should have been. So he had a massive swollen stomach, and it was just this lymph node leaking fluid into his stomach. And
it took them a while to figure that out, obviously.
They knew what it was, but apparently there's only one other kid there that's had it. So it's very, very rare for it to happen. And that kid had it for 6 months, and he ended up having a shunt, I think it was, put into him, and that helped drain the fluid. And Sam had it, would have been for probably a good 3 weeks, and wasn't going away because they just said, let's just sit and watch and wait, and maybe it might go away, maybe it won't, because they didn't want to go back in and open him up and do something else. And in the end, they end up putting it's called just a pig's tail. So it's just a needle that they put into his stomach, had a pig's tail on the inside, so they couldn't pull it out. And they drained, I think it was like 3 or 4 kilos of fluid out of his stomach. So,
and this spurred you on to looking at alternatives?
So after his surgery, he had one more round of chemo, and then he had some scans. And so what his Curie score when he was diagnosed was 16. And by the time his
What's a Curie score?
Yeah.
So a Curie score is it's a score out of 30 that is given to, it doesn't apply to blood cancer, it's more like a bone or tumour type cancers.
It's like white blood cells, red blood cells kind of thing? Or not?
No, so pretty much how much cancer is in you. So if you have a 30 out of 30, you're riddled and you're a goner pretty much. So Sam was a 16 out of 30. And
so that's more than, that's over half.
That's over half.
Yeah.
So he was stage 4, high risk category. And by the time he'd had 6 induction rounds and surgery, he was only down to 12. So they said that out of every 10 kids, 7 will respond. So by that time, he would have been down to a 2 or 3. Out of the 3 that don't respond, so he's in the 3, which he's sort of getting pretty small odds. And so they said he's actually, it's called refractory relapse. He's not responding to treatment anymore. It's growing back, and it's not good. So they said, so now his chance has gone from 60 down to 30%. That's halved.
Wow.
So 30% chance of survival. So roll with the punches, I suppose. But so that was
a big punch, man. Like,
I felt that one. So so that would have been end of July, start of August, and they said there's a trial coming out, and would you like to join it? So from America. So there was 2, A and a B. So one was immunotherapy with dinutuximab, which is immunotherapy mixed with irinotecan and temozolide, which is 2 chemos, which is strain A. And strain B was those 3, but with DFMO. And we'd read a lot about DFMO, and we thought we'd love to get into that strain. So we prayed hard about it. Well, a lot of the churches were praying hard that we'd get into strain B with the DFMO. And we didn't. We got into strain A. And we'd seen results of that. And they'd been okay, but they weren't anywhere near as good as the ones with DFMO. And I was like, well, it's obviously... That's what the Lord wants.
Hand you've been dealt.
Yeah, so that's what we're run with. Anyway, he went on to that, and within 6 rounds of that, his Curie score had gone down to, I think it was 8. 9. So he'd gone from 12 to a 9 after 6 rounds, and so it seemed to be working quite well. But it was getting back to your question. Sorry, the natural and alternative methods was we'd heard 30% chance of survival. It's really not good. A lot of kids don't make it from here. So they said just prepare yourself. More than likely, it's not looking good. And so at that time, we got onto a family friend recommended us to a naturopath in near St Andrews in Melbourne. And so we went and saw her, and she was really good. She didn't have a lot of experience working with children, but she had a lot of experience working with adults. And she was brilliant. She could check all his treatments that he was on against the supplements that she wanted to give him to make sure that none were cancelling each other out and none would work against each other. And we started doing that, but we weren't really strict with it because his immunotherapy was working. We sort of put pedal off the metal, and we did to a certain extent, but we weren't really pushing it hard. And we're still learning a lot, but it wasn't till really Christmas time. So he'd done must have been 12 rounds by then, and his career score had stayed at, I think it was 8 or something. So it had dropped from 8 to a 9, but it hadn't changed in probably 2 or 3 months. It hadn't changed, and so we got called in 2 days before Christmas, and they said it looks like he's responding again. Not responding. He stopped responding to his treatment. And pretty much without saying it, they said, we don't think he's going to make it. So they said, and go for quality over quantity, enjoy some time, and it does not look good for him.
In other words, give up.
Pretty much.
And
So
you mentioned this was when you were thinking of the camper, or the bus, driving around. Was that around this time? Or the time you sort of just wanted to go away with him and sort of travel?
Yeah, so we thought about that, and then we thought, no, not an option. We've got to see this through. So we obviously talked about a week just to sort of get ourselves back together and formulate what we wanted to do. And so it's him leaving is not an option. If Lord wills it, I'll accept it. But until it happens, it's not an option. So I was chatting to a friend back in Benalla, and he had been very unwell for good 2 years, and no doctor could diagnose him. And he ended up going to this naturopath in Albury. Oh, I think it was Albury, yeah. And she fixed him. I think he ended up having Crohn's disease or something. And so I booked in with her straight away, and made the trip about 3.5 hours to Albury. And she said that he's intolerant to dairy, intolerant to gluten, intolerant to all these other different foods, and they're all causing inflammation in his body. So his immune system straight away is not concentrating on the cancer cells because his body's so inflamed that it's not concentrating on cancer. So she said he needed to get rid of inflammation in his body, and she gave us a few different supplements and what he can eat, what he can't eat. So she could tell what his stomach was doing, what organs, liver, kidneys, gallbladder, everything. She could tell what his bloods were like. She could tell everything. And she said what needed working on, and obviously his stomach was not where it should be. It's been smashed by chemo. So she said the first thing you need to do is fix his gut health, because if his stomach's not digesting the stuff you're giving him, it's not helping anybody. So he needs to be able to absorb what you give him to be able to start healing him. So she said gut health and diet. So we took all that and we went to our naturopath who we had seen early in the year back in St Andrews. And so she gave us a lot more supplements. She took on what this other naturopath had said. And so we changed his diet. So it went completely sugar-free, went completely gluten-free, dairy-free. We stopped shopping at Woolworths, Coles, Aldi. We got an app called Yuka. It's YUKA, and that tells you pretty much every single ingredient, tells you what's hazardous, what we shouldn't be eating.
Everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Give me an idea of what a normal meal would have looked like for Sammy, or a normal day of meals, if he was able to eat more than one meal a day. Tell me what that was like.
It's well, before in his induction chemo, he wasn't eating much at all. He'd be lucky to eat one meal a day, maybe. He just couldn't eat. Even the smell of food would make him. He'd be throwing up so much that he'd start throwing up the green stuff in his stomach, like his stomach lining. He was he just had nothing left, but he was just super violently sick. His neck. I could put my thumb on my index finger around his neck. There was nothing to him. He was skin and bones.
I actually remember a time when that's what we were praying for most, is that he would be able to eat. I remember that was a big deal. He wasn't eating, and that was a bad sign, obviously.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So pretty much the immunotherapy, that was really tough on him at the start. He had to be, so he's done rituximab. It attacks, or it disturbs your nerves endings like in your fingers and your toes, and pretty much throughout your whole body. So it's quite painful to be on. And so to be on it, you have to have morphine, ketamine, endone. There was one more. Might have been cefuroxime or something. Anyway, so he was on all these different painkillers, and his rates per hour is about 10 mil per hour, but he couldn't handle it. He was just in too much pain. The morphine wasn't working. He was maxed out on morphine, maxed out on ketamine, maxed out on endone, and it wasn't working. He was in too much pain, so they ended up having to halve it to 5 mil. So he's usually 10 mil an hour for 10 hours, with a 2-hour flush afterwards. So he ended up being on 5 mil an hour for 20 hours, with a 2-hour flush. So 22 hours, 2-hour break, then start again. So that was for probably the first 4 or 5 rounds.
I know drug addicts that don't go that hard, bro.
Yeah.
You know.
I was going to say.
He's gone through a fair bit. And his temperature would regularly spike to 40, 41 degrees. His heart rate would quite regularly just go off the scale. His breathing would drop, his oxygen would drop, and so he had to have OBS every 15 minutes just to make sure that everything's within their range. And there was times where I had to turn it off completely, give him a break. And but as time goes on, your body sort of adjusts to it. And now he's only on, I think it's 2 mil of morphine, only for 10 hours that he's on it, and that's it. Doesn't really faze me anymore. But the first round was awful. Loz actually did it, not sort of realizing what we're in for, and she ended up having to call me in from work because he was literally paralyzed with pain. He couldn't move. He was like, couldn't breathe. He was just looking at you like a horrified face, just couldn't move. He was just paralyzed with pain. So you couldn't pick him up, you couldn't touch him. They ended up just bombing him out. And
because otherwise he wouldn't sleep.
Well, no, he couldn't. He was just in a world of pain. So so that was really difficult. But each round got slightly better, and probably after round 12, I wouldn't say he breezed through it, but it didn't really affect him much anymore after round 12. So he could walk around. We bring his bike in, or he could walk around. He could jump off the bed and sort of walk without too much pain. Now he's flying around his little balance bike, loving life in there. Or doesn't love life in there, but he can he can ride his bike around the whole ward. He runs around that, and he's
So was supplements mostly what he was on, or was there like a carnivore diet you put him on? Like what changed?
So his diet after Christmas changed to no.
So sorry to interrupt. Sorry. Yeah. So at this point, is he still mainly ingesting food through his nasal tube? Or,
So in hospital, so in hospital, he's on a hospital feed up until must have been September, October. No, must have been after Christmas. Must have been January.
And what does that consist of?
So
give us all the good stuff.
He was on Monogen. It's called Monogen, and they changed that to Pepti Junior, which is a different feed. It's easier on your stomach.
What is it? Yeah. What's in this stuff?
Yeah. So I wish I had asked that question a lot earlier. And anyway, so after our meeting with the doctors 2 days before Christmas, and we're back in next, I said, well, we've got to start cracking down on what he's on. So I asked for his ingredients list of his Peptamen Junior, which is their hospital feed, dietitian recommended.
Pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
stuff.
So
his first ingredient on there was whey, which was intolerant to, causing inflammation. Wow. So second was sucrose, which is sugar, which is cancer's favourite food. The third was potato starch,
which turns into sugar.
Fourth was vegetable oil. So, and then after that, it was just
Vegetable oil.
And after that, it was like numbers or like additives, preservatives. It's pretty much like a chemical
slurry. Yeah.
So, and
so at this point, I mean, you're obviously building in your knowledge base.
Yep.
And you're going, glucose, starches turn to sugar, vegetable oil, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. So by this time, by Christmas, we're like, it's not really working. He's going downhill. We sort of peaked a little bit after when we first started his immunotherapy, but now he's going back downhill again. And 30% chance. So he's sort of running out of time, running out of options. So we thought, what have we got to lose? We'll try something completely different. And so I asked about his feeds, and because we'd found a new feed called Liquid Hope, and it's from the States. You've got to order it in. And it's organic kale, organic broccoli, potato, spinach, turmeric, garlic, ginger, carrots. Normal food. That's alkaline. So all the green stuff's alkaline, and we took that in there, and we said we'd like to start using our feeds. And the dietitian came back and she said it's not hospital policy. If you're in here, you have to use our feeds. And I think, oh, well, fair enough. And then I thought about, no. So I called it back in, and I said, as his dad and as his guardian, I said, I'm not using your feeds. Well, I want to use my feeds. I said, you can look at the ingredients, and surely a child could tell me that
you're a dietitian,
clearly
for goodness sake.
This is it's no comparison. And anyway, we end up having to sign a waiver. So I signed a waiver, and pretty much the nurses were told by hospital policy that they're not allowed to change the bottles, they're not allowed to mix the bottles, they're not allowed to prime the pumps, do a bottle changeover. And we were warned that if our bottles were found in the fridge, that they could be potentially thrown out. And the nurses, to the credit, they all said, "Don't worry about that." I said, "If you want to do it, go for it. We're not gonna. If you want to help, we'll help you. If you want us to change a bottle, we'll change a bottle." Did
that point right there? Did that give you a suspicion that, like we talked about this before the podcast at the beginning, that it's almost like there's two parallel ways of thinking within the hospital. There are, like you say, nurses who you kind of gauge know what you're on about, but they can't verbalize it. Because they're going to get their superiors cracking down on it. And then there are those who are ignorant. They've got their medical degrees, but they're ignorant of these simple aspects of let's say, just simple food. And then we talked about the more nefarious aspects, which we can't really prove, so we're not going to go down that track today. But did you sort of feel like the nurses were like, we know what you're on about? Yeah,
so the nurses, I could not speak any higher of the nurses there at all. They've been absolutely incredible. During COVID, they were extremely low on numbers. They didn't have many nurses. A lot of them were doing double shifts. They had a very hard time, and they were absolutely incredible. They supported us in everything we wanted to do. They would regularly come in and say, "Would you like to go downstairs, get a coffee, get something to eat?" I can't speak for them more highly. There's a couple of doctors there we don't see eye to eye very, very on a lot of. One of them actually came in and told me that the natural supplements that we were giving Sam they weren't scientifically based and were doing more harm than good, and that she'd appreciate it if we stopped it.
Wow.
And I said to her that if you guys were actually serious about getting kids ready, so you wouldn't serve them up the food that you do. I think it's just sugary, preserved, artificial rubbish. It's not doing anything for them. They're not getting anything from that. So I don't think she actually thought of that before. Because she had a bit of a...
What can I ask why? So without asking about their credentials, what stage of their career, like when you get confronted with this stuff, and I guess like for us as lay people, we're just reading sucrose, starches, sugar,
Healthy
cancer.
food make you healthy.
Well, not even that. Not even that. We just know what cancer feeds off. And you're sitting in front of dietitians. You're sitting in front of, what did you say? Was that one of the oncologists?
So she was a fellow. So I'm not 100% sure what a fellow is. I know there must obviously a doctor of I suppose of some sort of cancer of oncology, but I don't believe they're maybe done their diploma or their bachelor of whatnot. So I suppose they're in their training to become that.
So to be fair, some of these individuals that you, I guess, butting heads with, they were younger, 20s?
Oh, no,
early
they'd
30s?
have been their 30s. They're
30s?
probably
Okay.
mid to late 30s, I suppose.
Okay.
So I actually never saw her again after that. And the doctor that I questioned about the unvaxxed blood, I never saw him again after that either.
Yeah.
So
Praise
I
God.
don't know where they went. I don't know what happened to him. Never seen him since. So, but they do rotate regularly through there. So whether they finish a rotation, I don't know. But
Was there a correlation between Sammy's health improving and the time when you had changed his diet?
Immediately. So as soon as we got rid of his inflammation, so changed his diet, we had his blood type. I wish my wife was here. She no, I think it's O positive or B negative or something. Anyway, so he's naturally deficient in magnesium and a few other things. So we give him, this is rattling off the top of my head. So we give him magnesium. He has colostrum. He has zinc. He has silvestrol. Silvestrols are been the biggest game changer with all his meds, and they've actually been proven by natural medicine doctors to actually specifically help with neuroblastoma cancer. So they've been huge. He has there's probably 12 to 14 different meds that he would have every day that we give him. That's the natural ones. So he has his silvestrols in the morning, but it'll be 45 minutes to an hour before he has breakfast, just so he has to have an empty stomach. And then midday, Lauren will give him another 4 or 5. And then after tea, he'll have another 4 or 5, or probably more, probably 6 or 7 meds before he goes to bed. And we've since also found out that frankincense oil mixed with castor oil has also been proven to reduce the size of tumours, because it will just pretty much break up anything that shouldn't be in you. So if you got a tumour in your stomach, rubbing castor oil and frankincense oil apparently will help break that down. So we do that twice a day.
So this is all just interjecting here. See, our immune systems are very, very powerful things.
Absolutely.
We're all we're doing is enabling and empowering our immune system
to do its thing.
Yep.
So pretty much all the naturopaths said, start with gut health, get his gut up and running, because chemo kills your gut. And if your gut's not working and your body's not absorbing, you're not putting on your weight, your bloods are never going to come back up. So as soon as he got his gut health back up to normal, or it's never going to be, I suppose, at a normal level for a long time, but it's at a much, much better rate than what it was. And he can absorb everything pretty well now. And so as soon as that happened, his hairs started to come back, and that was with immunotherapy as well. It doesn't sort of really make your hair fall out, but his hairs come back. His weights, I think he's 15.4 kilo or 15.5 kilos now. So he's put on, in probably 5 or 6 months, he's put on, what's that now? Well, he's put on 6 kilos since he started his immunotherapy, which is a lot. So his blood levels are back to normal. And in fact, last week at the end of round 17, I actually had a doctor come in and they said, we actually don't have protocols for Sam because he's so healthy. They said there's nothing in our books for him. Wow. They said he's in a league of his own. And she said he's the most healthiest kid she's had in the ward. So you don't need a doctor's discharge. You don't even need a nurse discharge. Pretty much they can disconnect you and you're free to go.
I'm so blown away by that. I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised that you said that, but I'm so blown away by it.
Yeah,
in a good way.
I witnessed a lot of this, and I can tell you, man, like that boy didn't look healthy, man.
He was super sick.
He did not look healthy, and I saw him a few weeks ago. I was like, who's that kid? You know, like, is this Sam? You know,
the comparison, if you compare the two 12 months ago, huge difference. He's got all his hair back, his weight's back, his growth has actually not really been stunted that much. He's growing, he's doing with all he's well above normal. And if he didn't have a tube in his nose, you wouldn't know he had cancer.
I want to go down a bit of a dark alley here. Not on your account here, but I'm at Fringe Frequencies where we join the dots and we follow the breadcrumbs. So just going back to the whole relationship between chemotherapies in particular and the diets. Chemotherapy has been something that's been around for decades. Decades and decades.
Absolutely,
and decades. The knowledge of what cancers feed off has been around for decades and decades and decades. So with the chemo itself, I actually don't know because I've not looked it up, but I assume it's fairly costly.
I actually haven't looked up the exact cost of it either, but I'm assuming the taxpayer is paying a lot for it.
And there's probably some licensing or some agreement with some American company, or maybe a local production.
I've seen a lot of Pfizer stickers on a lot of
Wow.
treatments. Here's a surprise for us.
So on the one hand, we've got these chemotherapies that either they don't work at all. In other words, they destroy the human being, or they leave the individual with lasting effects. Would it be a stretch to say that by not feeding them a healthy diet while they're on the chemo, it prolongs the process so that more money can be made from chemo? Would that be the end result?
There's a lot going on in that question.
If you were someone,
that's a fair question.
If you're a pharmaceutical company, absolutely.
Yeah,
but that would be the dot joiner, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Now, see, even with the drugs, last I looked up, there's about 253,000 drugs available to the Western world, and out of those,
how many?
253,000.
Wow.
So out of those 253,000, there's something like 550 different antibiotics, which have their place, I suppose. They're not very good for you, but they do. My life was being saved at 21 by antibiotics. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have antibiotics. So that leaves 252 odd thousand Western drugs that are available to you and me. So none of them cure. They treat, but they don't cure. There's a difference. So treating you
they don't treat the underlying causes.
No,
they don't. It's basically
symptoms.
It's an ambulance at the bottom of the hill.
You're creating a patient for life. Money trail.
Yeah.
Right.
So and this is the thing, like for our listeners here, like we're not against Western medicines.
No. It has its place, definitely.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you start joining the dots and you start following the breadcrumbs, you start asking some questions about what I just said, which is like, great, if we feed this diet, this prolongs this process, and it's like, well, who stands to gain? Paul, the love of money is the root of all evil. We talk about that quite a lot.
You know, something I heard, which I really enjoyed, and is a bit of a side thing to what the story is here, but at the same time, you know, is it really crazy to think that companies that are fined billions of dollars for malpractice and nefarious actions, is it crazy to think that there may be some ulterior motives in some of their decision making? For me in particular, I mean, you only need to look into Pfizer a little bit. They are a shady company. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
And they have a lot of money on the line. Pardon me.
If you stood to make $900 billion, why do you care about a $3 billion fine?
Well, they've got I believe Pfizer has the largest criminal fine.
We talked about that, yeah. 2001.
Yeah, it was 2.3 billion or something.
In their early billions. That was one of our first podcasts. Yeah.
But I believe what they got fined on, they actually made, was it 7 billion?
Yeah.
So they've still got 5 billion left over from their fine.
No, it's even worse than that, because you have the the Drug Administration.
TGA?
In the States.
FDA.
Yeah.
So the FDA are the ones that obviously do the fining. And a lot of those individuals in the FDA originally came from which industry itself anyway?
Yeah, pharmaceutical.
So it's like, it's a big, it's essentially, I'm just going to call it what is a mafia.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no
just to say it publicly, at this point.
Yeah. I'm skeptical of most businesses, and I don't think that's a fringe thing. I don't think it's a fringe thing these days, especially to just be like, do we think that they have our best intentions at heart when they look at a spreadsheet and it says, look, if we feed kids this food, they can come off the chemo much earlier. And if we feed kids this food, they can stay on chemo for months, Do I think that there's an employee that goes, yeah, feed them the bad food, Maybe, but I can say earnestly that, cancer is a big business.
It's massive. There's money in sick people.
Yeah.
So, I say, I strongly believe that all of the doctors that I've dealt with, they all have Sam's best intentions
and
at
nurses,
heart. Nurses especially. I cannot speak more highly of them. They're angels from God. They're incredible people.
We're not talking about people in the ward.
No, it's the hierarchies and the powers to be. That's I really think that the doctors behind the scenes would really love to know more about what we do with Sam. But I think that if they were to perhaps go against hospital policy, go against their notebooks and whatnot, I think they would risk losing their license.
I was going to say they would,
and so that's probably not worth it for them.
I mean, we saw that, and sorry to get this so far off Sammy's story, but we saw that with the vaccine.
Oh, big time! Yep.
Any doctor that gave out an exception or whatever they were, man, they were like reviewed, and most cases, like, I don't know,
deregistered.
Yeah, deregistered. Didn't have lost their medical license.
Yeah, there are very few doctors in Australia that are not vaccinated, that either had a really hard time staying unvaccinated and kept their jobs, or then just didn't, or either then left or then lost their job.
Yep,
very few.
Yep.
If you could, there's someone out there now whose child at 18 months has just been told they have cancer, stage 4. What would you say to that person?
I meet those people all the time.
Yeah.
And as weird and as strange as it sounds, coming to the end of our treatment now, I'll actually miss being in hospital because I meet new dads all the time, and I'll meet them day in, day out. There's always new dads coming in, new families, new kids. Most of them are between, I met some of them 4 months old, diagnosed. Some of them are 17, 18 years old. There's all ages. Most of them would be below 4, I suppose. There's a lot of 18 months, 18-month-old kids in there. And I was actually on Friday last week. Sam's treatment doesn't finish till about 1:30 in the morning. So there's not much point going to bed because the nurses always come in, do half-hour obs. They've got to change his meds over, give him meds, do his his obs. His pumps are always going off, so you got to call the nurses in to re-prime or readjust his pumps or something. So by the time it finishes, there's no point going to bed because you're up and down like a yo-yo. So it's been about 10 o'clock, and I was walking out of my little room to go make a coffee in the kitchen, and the dad next door, he walked at the same time. And earlier that day, I had seen them, a group of doctors walk in, and they had a volunteer with them. And usually that's not a very good sign because it means the volunteer is going to stay with the kid, and the doctors are going to take the parents out to another room, and usually they usually got some bad news. And I saw them come back in, and they're both very teary, and I didn't really see them for the rest of the day. But 10 o'clock, we walked out of the room at the same time. And so I introduced myself, and we ended up talking to about 2 o'clock, it must have been 2:30 in the morning, just outside our hospital doors. And he'd been told that morning that his daughter wasn't going to live more than 2 weeks. They had 2 weeks left with her. Cancer had spread to bowels, liver, stomach. She was riddled with it. And she didn't have more than 2 weeks to live. So that was, today's Friday, isn't it? So that was today, a week ago. If she's still alive, she's only got days left to live. And He was telling me, like she at the minute, her lady parts are there's no skin on them. The chemo's burned it off. She's got burns on the outside of her skin from chemo leaking out of her skin and burning from the outside in. She's got, you can't pick her up, you can't touch her. She's no hair. She's so sick and so weak she can't lift her head off of the pillow.
So at this point, it's not the cancer killing her.
Her body is too wrecked. It just physically cannot fight anything.
Wow.
So what did you say to him?
I pretty much just listened to him. He's from Tasmania. He had no friends, no family. In Melbourne by himself with his daughter who's dying. So he just had a lot. I don't know. I suppose he appreciated, I suppose, just having a bit of a chat. And he ended up having to go back, and his daughter woke up all upset and said goodbye. And I actually never saw him again. I didn't, I suppose, really want to knock on the door and disturb him. I'm not sure what they were doing there. But
were you able to share? Did you have a chance to sort of share your experience and some of the things you were doing as Sammy?
Yep.
To make a difference, and on top of that, what was the difference in the stages between his daughter and your son? Like, at what stages was she further along?
So she was diagnosed in January.
No, what I mean is further along as in her health deteriorating.
Oh, she couldn't eat, she couldn't walk, she couldn't move, you couldn't pick her up. Her cancer had just gone like wildfire. Her body had no immunity. There's nothing stopping the cancer from growing.
So at that point, the immune system was just toast. So even if they changed the diet, it may not have made a difference because the immune system.
I think at that point in time, I don't know if a lot of things would have helped her. I think she was just, and I don't know. You could see in his face, and he told me he was in tears, and he told me that enough's enough. He said he can't bear to see his daughter go through anymore. He's like, we're stopping treatment. I've got to let her go. He said that's not living, and yeah. So that's and I've seen 8 kids die now. I've been to their funerals. I've seen. I still catch up with their parents, and it's not easy seeing dad carry his kid down the aisle in a coffin at all. But I suppose it's a stage. Not every kid's going to walk out, I suppose. At the same time, that same day, there's a family we had been in hospital for a very long time with, and we actually got invited to go and watch her daughter ring the bell. So all the nurses line up down the long hallway, and there's a bell at the door, and it's got a inscription written on it. And for kids who have gone into remission, they get the whole hospital runs out to this long hallway, and the kid walks down to their family and rings the bell, and it's signifying that they're done and their journey's over. And so we got to watch that, and we are really looking forward to doing that with Sam one day. When that day is, I don't know. But I've seen a lot of kids ring the bell. I've seen more kids ring the bell than I've been to funerals, probably 2 or 3 times more. It always gives you a bit of a chill, watching them, because you know what they've been through. You can sort of relate. Just it's not just the kid, I suppose. It's the parents probably go through just as much, if not more, because you're watching your kid. You're just helpless. You can't do anything, I suppose. Yep. And just everything from watching kids to finances, because if I'm in there, there's no money coming in, to Lauren stuck at home, to Tommy sort of I'm in hospital, Sam's hospital for the whole week, so he misses us. It's equally hard on everybody. It's not just I suppose Sam. It's sort of the whole group. So it's
so at this stage with Sammy's health, how would you have?
What's this? Did he have another Curie score test?
So his Curie score now is at 4. So his last scan was in March.
Whoa.
And so it went from December to March. It went from 8 to 4.
Half. Wow.
So
and that's coincided with diet.
Coincided with diet. So the only thing that changed
no more chemo
in those 3 months was so he's still on the treatment. So he's dinutuximab, and he's irinotecan, and he's temozolide. So he's still on those. But the only thing that changed from December to March was his diet and his supplements that we give him.
Wow. So I guess you would say then that they're a strong community. You know, there are people there that you're not going to be alone, sort of thing.
Absolutely not. No, and there's some parents in there, and you never hear of again. There's some parents in there that have lost their kids, and they just move hours and hours away, interstate, other end of Victoria, and you never hear from them again. There's other parents which I keep in regular contact with. There's probably 4 or 5 dads there at the minute, probably even more, that I keep in regular contact with. I text probably, if not every day, every second day. There's probably 4 of us that are going to go camping at a mate's place for a couple of nights, just to get them out of the city, out of the environment, just to get away, refreshed, clear the mind. Just get into the bush, sit around the campfire, and yeah, just to refresh. And I think not being, when we finish our treatment, I think that's probably the thing I'll miss the most is obviously, you get to know a lot of the nurses really well. They look after Sam like one of their own kids. They all come up and say hi, down to the last nurse. They all walk up, they all come up and ask Sam, how you going? They all, he loves playing doctors and stuff there, so they all bring him gloves, they all bring him syringes, not the sharp ones. They all bring him like vials of water, just everything, and anything he wants, they'll go get. Doesn't matter if it's in a different ward and a different level. But I've had nurses from different levels. So we're in level 2. I've had nurses coming down from level 3 and 4, and they come and they say, "Are you the person that's doing the natural treatment? We've heard about what you're doing, and we've seen Sam, and so what are you actually doing?" And yeah, it's fascinating to Sam.
Mate, I would be, if I was a doctor in there, I would be interested. I'd be like, "What's going on with this kid?"
Yeah, so it's funny enough, no doctors have really asked. I've told them, I don't really care. Our senior oncologist has been fantastic. I couldn't really, I don't really have anything bad to say about him. He's been super supportive.
Has he asked any questions about diet?
Yep, I've told him. I'm not going to hide anything. I've told him everything, and there was I did have a couple of questions for him in regards to his treatment, and said, if we don't want to do that, are you going to take us to the child services, or do we risk having our child taken off us? And he said no, definitely not. He said pretty much what he'll do is he'll give us some options, what he thinks is the best course. He said, you guys can choose. He said, if you don't want to do them, he said, that's fine. If you want to stop treatment, stop treatment. He said, if you want to do alternative with us, go for it.
Awesome.
He said he's actually been super supportive. This particular oncologist he thinks outside the box. He's been there for a very long time, and he's been quite unreal, really. He has a lot last say in a lot of things, and he's been quite supportive, actually. So
that's amazing.
Honestly, man, there's I want to ask about things like how this impacted your marriage, how it impacted you as a father to Tommy, how he dealt with it. I know that's a big thing. Like, there's so much to ask, but I don't have the time, unfortunately.
Well, we could always do another one.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I think that's what we're going to do eventually. We're just going to cycle back through.
I think we'll have you back on. So
I'd love to talk to
Sammy.
too.
So Sammy is still going back into hospital frequently, or is he there right now?
So Sam is back in on the 7th of this month of August. Okay. So he's doing so well at the minute that they said he's got a scan on I think it's on the 5th of August, and we find out the results on the 8th of August. And if that scan result comes back good, then we only have 1 week of treatment left.
Then you're dinging the bell?
So I don't think we get to ding the bell just yet. He'll be finished his immunotherapy, and that will be his last week in hospital. And then he'll be on retinoic acid, which pretty much helps his cancer cells mature and die. But we can give that to him at home. So pretty much he won't need to be in hospital anymore. But at this point in time, if his scan is good, Sam will be one of the first neuroblastoma patients that hasn't had radiation, that hasn't had a stem cell transplant, that hasn't had MIBG therapy, that hasn't had all these other standard protocol treatments.
Wow.
Bypass all of them.
Oh my goodness.
So and
that's
it was. You're looking back now. It's been an answer prayer. So when Sam relapsed 12 months ago, if he hadn't have relapsed, he would have gone into a stem cell transplant, which we really didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But because he relapsed, he wasn't eligible for it. So he had to go on immunotherapy. And you looking back from February till now, or February 22 till now, you look back and we always said, Lord, you know the desire of our hearts, you know what we want, you know what we don't want to do, and we haven't had to do any of it.
That was one of the things that I just didn't have time to get into. Was there a moment, and I think I already know the answer to this, but was there a moment in your family where you were just like, why us, God? Why us? It's
a good question. I get asked quite a lot, and I get asked by a lot of people in the hospital. And I've actually honestly never asked why me, why us, why Sam. My answer to most people is Romans 8:28. I think it says, "For all things work together for good to them who are called according to His purpose." And pretty much, Sam being diagnosed, whilst hasn't been enjoyable by any stretch of the imagination. It's been a rough journey, but I can know. I don't have to know why it was him, but I can know that there's a purpose for it. There's a reason, and that some good will come of it. So whether it's tomorrow, in 50 years from now, I don't know, but I know that there's a purpose. There's a reason, and I said this to most people I know, and to Lauren. I said, if you got to look at it as a win-win. For us, if Sam makes it, I'll get him back. Yeah. If he doesn't, I will see him again one day. And, I suppose it's just such a bad thing to skip. It's a pretty cruel world out there. There's nothing glamorous or nice about this world, really. If you look at it long and hard, is it? But it's, it was never, I was never going to lose either way.
I love that attitude, man. It was win-win. It was win-win.
It's either g'day or see you later.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll see you again one day.
Yeah, that is a wonderful verse. For we know all things work towards good to them that love God, and I'll say, it's a bit rushed, but bro, if you were able to give us an understanding of what the gospel is, what would you say it is?
So, I was actually in hospital this week. Actually, I was on my laptop. I was just putting a message together. I had seen a verse, and it was the thief on the cross. And so pretty much the thief on the cross, there was two of them, one either side, they're crucified. And one reviled, and the other one said, Jesus has done no wrong. We're deserving of our punishment. And then he said, Lord, remember me when I come into your kingdom.
When you enter into your kingdom.
Yeah. And if you look at him, the thief, he was criminal. He was obviously not a morally good person, not someone that you would look up to. He was probably a murderer. He would have beaten people. He would have stolen things. He wasn't a good person.
Just to be clear, crucifixion wasn't willy-nilly. It was for really bad people. So, yeah.
So he's there for a reason. And so he's a bad person. He's stuck on the cross. He's helpless. He's got nothing to offer. He can't offer money. He can't offer services. He's nailed to a cross. He's helpless. But he recognized that Jesus was Lord at that point on the cross, and he said, "Remember me." And Jesus said, "Today you'll be in paradise with me." And so pretty much, I suppose that's the gospel message just there. Like, we've got nothing to offer Jesus, nothing we can do. All we have to do is believe that he's Jesus, that he is Lord. There's nothing that we can physically offer or do. All we need to do is believe. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever. So whosoever, you look at the thief on the cross, bad person, he would have killed people, he would have done a lot of bad things. But whosoever is anybody. It's for anybody. It's a free gift. And all you need to do is believe. And
then follow.
And follow through. Obviously, our faith with works. Obviously, the two go hand in hand. But so that would.
Yeah, look, I think that's a wonderful rendition of the gospel, man. I always focus on the thief. You know, when people struggle with, well, what am I supposed to do now? It's like, well, if you have the opportunity, man, show your faith by your works.
Yep.
You know, but he didn't have much option to show his faith by his works, and yet he was promised paradise.
Yep, he believed.
That was a great explanation of the gospel. I think a lot, and I just touching on that. I think some people misunderstand the gospel or misinterpret it. As Christians, we're not saying that works come through our belief.
Exactly.
Our belief doesn't come through our works, and we're not saved by our works. If we're saved by our works, then then none of our works measure up to God's goodness.
Well, then Christ died in vain.
Well, that's right. Salvation is a gift, and our works are an expression of our belief and faith in Jesus Christ. So thanks. That was fantastic.
Faith without works is dead.
It is.
You know, and we don't shy away from that, but we know that our works don't bring us salvation. Bro, you know, what a wonderful story to hear.
And thanks for coming on.
Truly, I meant it when I said
pleasure.
it, man. Like, it's a privilege to know you.
I think we'll do. We'll have you on maybe maybe later on in the year.
Bro, I want Sammy on here, man.
I'd love to come back.
As a bit of a follow up to Sammy's health.
I want Sammy to come on and say hello. You know?
Yeah, no, we'll bring him on. We'll bring him on one day, and hopefully, if we obviously appreciate your prayers and whatnot. If our scan could be good, that'd be incredible. That'd mean that we could pretty much be out of the hospital system, and we'd only have to go in for scans every so often, and life could pretty much go back to not back to normal, I suppose. We'll stay here in Melbourne. We're not going to go back home anytime yet.
Yeah.
But we'll. I suppose we could start a new chapter.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Cody. And this is another episode of Fringe Frequencies, and we'll see you back in another week, another fortnight. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Family stuff, flus, all that aside.
That's
Winter time. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Cody.
you.